Something was wrong before Anna could name it. She stood before the full-length mirror in the Whitmore Hotel's third-floor bridal suite, the lace of her dress pressing cool against her wrists, and studied her own reflection the way a person studies a document they've already signed. The room smelled of white roses, cut fresh that morning, and the overhead light caught the gold chain at her collarbone, her grandmother Vera's necklace, a thin rope of 18-karat gold, with a single oval garnet at its center. The wedding was scheduled for 6 o'clock that evening at the Whitmore's garden terrace. 41 guests, a string quartet, a caterer who had already invoiced the full $14,200. Anna had built it down to the seating cards, handwritten in her own careful script. David had been in charge of exactly one thing, the rehearsal dinner reservation at Carbone on 53rd. He'd confirmed it twice. She pressed 2 fingers to the garnet and felt its familiar warmth, the only thing in the room that felt entirely hers. At 9:47, Anna reached back to tighten the clasp, and her fingers found something unfamiliar, a spring ring closure, cheap and lightweight, where the original lobster clasp had always been. She unhooked it and held the necklace up to the window. The chain was the same length, the garnet the same deep red, but the gold ran a shade brighter than she remembered, and the back of the setting bore no engraving. Vera had always had her initials scratched there, VMC. They were gone. Anna set the necklace on the vanity and opened the black velvet jewelry case she'd carried from her apartment. Inside, beneath the folded tissue paper, was a small slip of yellow paper she had never put there. A pawn receipt from a shop called Reliable Gold on West 48th Street, dated the previous Thursday at 2:14 in the afternoon. The item listed, a garnet and gold necklace, 18-karat women's, sold outright for $380. The name on the receipt was David Calloway. Anna photographed it with her phone, then dialed the number printed at the top of the slip. The man at Reliable Gold confirmed the transaction without hesitation. David Calloway, Thursday, 2:14 p.m., $380, sold outright. Anna asked whether the piece was still in the case. A pause, the sound of a keyboard. Gone, the man said. Sold the same afternoon. Cash, walk-in. She asked if he had a name. He didn't. She set the phone down and looked at the replica lying on the vanity beside her powder brush. He had taken the original, sold it, put a copy in its place, and said nothing. That was the part she kept returning to. Anna dialed David's number. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. His voice easy and unhurried, the way it always sounded, the way she had always liked. She ended the call before the beep. She tried again. 4 rings, voicemail. She set the phone face down on the vanity and looked at the replica necklace lying on the glass surface beside her powder brush. He had taken the original, sold it, and replaced it with a copy, and said nothing. That was the part she kept returning to. She walked to the window and back 3 times. The caterer's final invoice was pinned to the porkboard above the desk. $14,200, paid in full last Monday. The deposit on the suite was non-refundable. 41 guests were already moving toward Manhattan, some from as far as Columbus and Charlotte. Anna had built the entire day like a structure, every beam load-bearing. She picked up the phone again, not to call David, but to check the address of Reliable Gold on West 48th, 12 minutes by cab from the Whitmore. She did not change out of the dress. There was no time, and some part of her wanted to arrive exactly as she was. The cab driver on 54th and 6th asked no questions, which she appreciated. The city moved past the windows in its usual indifferent way. Scaffolding, a halal cart, a woman walking a greyhound. Reliable Gold sat between a nail salon and a dry cleaner, its window cluttered with watches and chains and a hand-lettered sign, "We buy gold, best price guaranteed." Anna paid the driver and pushed open the door. The shop smelled of machine oil and old carpet. A glass case ran the length of the room, rings and pendants arranged under fluorescent light. Anna described the necklace, garnet, oval, 18-karat, initials VMC on the back of the setting, and the man behind the counter, heavy-set with a reading glasses chain looped around his neck, pulled up the Thursday log without being asked. He found the entry in under a minute and told her it had sold the same afternoon it came in, cash, walk-in. He turned the screen so she could see the timestamp, 4:02 p.m. Back at the Whitmore, Anna pushed open the door to the bridal suite and nearly stepped on it. A cream envelope on the floor just inside the threshold. Her first name written on the front in deliberate block letters she did not recognize. No flourish, no return address, unsealed. She picked it up and stood in the doorway with the city noise still in her ears. Inside was a single index card. It read, "I have Vera's necklace. I bought it Thursday to keep it safe. Come to Hannigan's Bar on 44th at 4 o'clock. Come alone." She read the card 4 times. The initial R meant nothing to her. No friend of David's, no cousin, no one from the guest list she could place. But the detail was right. Vera's necklace. Not a necklace. Not the necklace. Vera's. Whoever wrote this had either held the piece long enough to read the engraving, or had been told about it by someone who knew her family. Anna set the card on the nightstand beside the clock. 11:15. 4 o'clock was 4 hours and 45 minutes away. She picked up the phone and this time dialed David. David arrived in his rehearsal suit, a charcoal jacket over a white shirt, hair still damp from a shower. 34, broad-shouldered, with the habit of touching his jaw when he was working out what to say. Anna held up the pawn receipt without speaking. He looked at it for 3 seconds, then looked at the floor. He did not say it was a mistake, or that she had misunderstood. He said he had been in a bad spot in February, a debt to someone he'd rather not name, and that he'd meant to buy it back before she noticed. Anna told David she knew where the necklace was, and that she intended to retrieve it before 6 o'clock. He reached for her arm, and she stepped back, one precise step, and he let his hand fall. He said the name of the man who had bought it, Ray Muldoon, a regular at the poker table, someone David had borrowed from before. He said Ray was not dangerous, just old, and that he'd already tried to call him twice that morning with no answer. Anna picked up the index card from the nightstand and slipped it into the small pocket sewn into the seam of her dress. Hannigan's Bar on West 44th was the kind of place that had not changed its menu since 1987. Laminated cards, a Guinness tap, a television mounted too high on the wall. The afternoon crowd was thin, 2 men at the bar watching baseball, a woman working a crossword in the back booth. Anna stood in the entrance, still in the wedding dress, and the bartender said nothing, which was its own kind of New York courtesy. A man in the corner booth raised one hand, not waving, just marking his location. Ray Muldoon was 61 years old, with a face weathered past its years and a North Face jacket half-zipped despite the warmth of the bar. He had known Anna's father from the neighborhood in Woodside before her family moved to Jersey, had been at her parents' wedding in 1988, had watched her father lose everything at a table not unlike this one, and had spent 30 years trying to square that particular debt with the universe. He reached into the jacket's inner pocket and placed Vera's necklace on the table between them. The garnet caught the bar light. VMC was on the back. Ray had been at the Thursday game when David brought the necklace in. He had watched David's hands shake when he laid it on the table, and he had recognized the chain, thin rope gold, the same style her mother had worn in a photograph he still kept in a box somewhere. He bought it from the pawn shop 2 hours after David sold it, paying $460, because he could not watch it disappear into someone else's pocket. He did not ask Anna what she planned to do about the wedding. He ordered a coffee and looked at the baseball game. Outside, the late afternoon had gone gold and loud. Taxis, a jackhammer 2 blocks north, a food cart releasing steam into the October air. Anna stood on the sidewalk with the necklace in her closed fist, and the wedding dress catching the wind off the avenue. 4:38. The ceremony was in 82 minutes. She stood there long enough that a woman passing with a stroller glanced at her twice. Then Anna stepped to the curb and raised her arm, and a cab pulled over. The Whitmore's garden terrace faced west, and by 5 o'clock the light had dropped behind the building and left the space in a blue-gray dusk. The string quartet had not yet arrived. The chairs were set in rows, white with small ribbon bows. The aisle runner still rolled at the far end. David stood at the altar with his back to the entrance, hands in his pockets, and did not turn when he heard her footsteps on the stone path. The garden smelled of cut grass and something colder underneath, the first real edge of autumn coming through. She walked the full length of the aisle and stopped 2 feet from him. The sky above the terrace had gone the color of a bruise, deep violet at the edges. Anna opened her hand. The garnet sat in her palm, the gold chain coiled around it, the engraving visible even in the low light. David looked at it for a long moment, then looked at her face, and whatever he had prepared to say did not come. His jaw was tight. His eyes were wet. Anna kept her hand open and waited, and the garden held its quiet. He told her the number, 9,200, owed to a man named Caruso who had not been patient. He had been losing since January, small amounts at first, then amounts that required other amounts to cover them. He had told himself the necklace was temporary, a placeholder, not a theft. He said the word theft himself, without her having to. His voice did not break, but thinned at the edges, the way a person sounds when they have rehearsed something too many times, and the rehearsal has finally run out. Anna kept her hand open, the necklace still in her palm, and said nothing. Anna reached up and fastened the real necklace around her throat. Her fingers found the lobster clasp without looking. She had done it 10,000 times. The garnet settled against her collarbone exactly where it belonged, heavier than the replica, warm in a way the copy never had been. She did not tell David she forgave him. She did not tell him she didn't. She straightened the chain with 2 fingers and looked at him steadily, and he understood that whatever came next would be different from whatever he had imagined when he laid that necklace on a pawn counter on a Thursday afternoon in February. By 6 o'clock, the garden was lit with small white lanterns, and the string quartet was playing something slow and unhurried. The 41 guests filled the white chairs and turned when the music shifted. Anna walked alone down the aisle. She had always planned it that way, and the lantern light caught the garnet at her throat as she moved. She did not look at the guests. She looked at David, who stood at the altar with his hands clasped in front of him, very still, the way a person stands when they are trying to hold themselves accountable to the next 60 seconds. The officiant read the standard language, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, and Anna and David repeated it back in the order it was given. Anna's voice was steady. David's had a catch in it on the word honor that he did not try to smooth over. She noticed it. She thought it was the most honest thing she had heard him say in 11 months of engagement. When the rings were exchanged, his hands were cold, hers were warm. The quartet played the recessional. The guests applauded, and the garden smelled of cut grass and white roses, and the first cold breath of an October night. At the reception table, during the first course, Anna reached up and touched the garnet with 2 fingers, a habit carried since childhood, the way other people touch a lucky coin or a scar. David saw her do it. He did not look away. He picked up his water glass and held it without drinking, and the 2 of them sat inside the noise of 41 guests eating and talking and laughing, in a silence that belonged only to them. Not a comfortable silence, the kind that has weight and edges, and requires both people to keep choosing it, minute by minute. At 1:45, when the reception had ended and the lanterns had been extinguished, and David was asleep in the dark, Anna sat at the vanity and unclasped the necklace for the first time since she had put it back on in the garden. She held it under the small lamp, turning it until the engraving caught the light, VMC. She set it in the velvet case and closed the lid. She did not know with any certainty how the next year would go, whether the gambling was finished, whether the debt was the whole of it, whether trust was something that could be rebuilt from a receipt and an honest voice catching on a single word. She closed the velvet case and set it on the vanity beside the small hotel clock, which read 11:45. The room was quiet except for David's breathing and the low hum of the city outside the window. Anna did not open the case again. She turned off the lamp and lay down in the dark and looked at the ceiling and thought about nothing in particular, which was, she understood, something she had not been able to do in a long time. The necklace was back. What that meant for everything else was a question that would still be there in the morning, and the morning after that. Another hour finally told. This has been Untold Hours.